The Siliwangi is a Tier 7 premium Pan-Asian destroyer on sale now in the April 2026 update for 17,500 doubloons. And if you're considering picking it up, the reason you might want to get it will be shown in this first clip here before we get into the main battle. You see, we've spotted a Fletcher out here way on the side of the map. He's at full HP. We're beginning to work on him with the main battery guns, getting some decent damage. He's firing back, of course, and he smokes up. Big mistake, because we have some good ship spotting sonar on this little destroyer. We're going to pop the sonar now as the Fletcher loses sight of us thanks to the smoke screen. I think he's maybe spotted by one of our teammates that still got line of sight, but he goes dark. No problem. We're able to reveal him with the sonar. And at this point, he probably really should be coming out of the smoke screen to reacquire vision of us to have a fighting chance. But instead, he doubles down on the smoke screen. He decides to turn back into it to cut off his vision of me. And, well, we've still got vision of him thanks to the sonar. So a full health Fletcher, which is a fair amount of HP at Tier 7 and a pretty good destroyer, even though it's old, well, there it goes. It goes down with the smoke sonar combo, only it's not our smoke, it's the Fletcher's own smoke. So that's the main reason you might want to look at the Siliwangi, just because of that powerful smoke sonar combo. Now on to the main game, where I think we'll see it again, but we'll see some other capabilities of the ship as well. I'll tell you too that every match I played in this thing, practically every match that was a victory, was a boring, one-sided blowout that involved a lot of destroyers sinking, like you saw there against the Fletcher. If you can do that in a battle, that might be all you need to win the game. Hopefully your team is at least competent enough to pick up around the rest of the map. This particular battle is not going to go so well for the blue team, spoiler alert, but it is the most interesting battle that I've played in the Siliwangi thus far, and also I think it shows off what needs to be shown off for the purposes of a review. So, let me show you my commander build. It was a little bit different than what we were using in that first clip. You can see our HP is higher than it was in that engagement with the Fletcher, but the commander is Sa Shenbing, free-to-play Pan-Asian destroyer commander. We've got Bei and Sims as the two inspirations, and as you can see, he's spec'd into a gunboat build. Now, you might say in the third row of skills, I should probably be taking Perceptive or Twist and Track over Reaching Out, since they give you the RPF indicator that shows you the nearest direction of the closest enemy ship. It's useful if you're a gunboat destroyer aiming to hunt other destroyers, but the reason I took Reaching Out is because, number one, it buffs the main battery reload time, and I think that is kind of necessary for this particular ship, buffing that reload time as much as you can. And then also it increases the main battery range. And in fact, as we start going down the specs, let me tell you, the main battery range is a little bit anemic at base. It's only 10.9 kilometers, which I don't think is super conducive to farming ships at longer ranges from inside a smokescreen, which this ship can comfortably do, and which you'll see later. But with the reaching out skill, we have 11.8 kilometers of main battery range. I think that's a little bit more respectable. And basically what we have here is some sort of Soviet destroyer taken control of by, I assume, China. I think it might be an Ognavoy or something along those lines. It's got 4 130mm guns, typical Soviet destroyer size. We've already covered the range. These are in 2 double turrets, one on the front, one on the back, much like things like the Lushan, or the Neustrashimi at Tier 8. In fact, you could sort of consider this a light version of the Lushan. It's got the sonar, it's got the smoke, just doesn't have any heal of any kind. Anyway, the main battery reload time with this build, and if you noticed in the mod selection, I do have the reload mod in the 4th slot. It's 2.5 seconds, and the turret traverse is 10.6. Now, as for the damage that these shells do, I think the HE is a little bit on the low end. 1900 maximum damage with an 8% fire chance. And of course, being small guns, they pen 22 millimeters of armor only. The AP shells do a maximum of 2,500. And they do have, with Shasen Bing, improved minimum ricochet angles at 52.6 thanks to his base trait. But of course, base, the pen is conventional. 45-degree minimum ricochet angle and 60-degree maximum. So I suppose you can cut into the armor of enemy ships at steeper angles. The AP doesn't have all that much pen though. At maximum range, it falls off to only 66.5 millimeters. That would be enough to pen through the upper belt armor of a lot of battleships and cruisers. A lot of them only have 32. So you can get some shredding done with the AP, no doubt. I think it's the HE that you want to use against destroyers though. Speaking of which, here we have the smoke sonar combo coming in handy, using our own smoke this time to get a little bit of damage on that pirate ship, whatever it was. Speaking of the smoke and the sonar, this thing has, I think, sort of pan-Asian typical smoke, which, in my opinion, is one of the best smokes in the game. It's somewhere between the short burst British smokes and a regular smoke screen. We have 4 of them with the fully packed skill, or not with the fully packed. We have 4 of them with base, actually. And destroyers don't get fully packed. I don't even know why I said that. Anyway, we have 4 of them base, and they last for 72.4 seconds, but they reload in 120. So if you stay in one for the full duration, then by the time it's over, you've got to wait roughly 45-50 seconds before the next one comes up. That allows for a lot of flexibility in much the same way as the short burst British smokes do. Only you have to be a little bit more choosy about where you deploy the smoke screen. You only have 4, and they do last a little bit longer than the British, but I like them a lot. They provide a lot of versatility. And then the sonar, which you've already seen in action twice, it's got a 5.4 ship acquisition range and a 3.8 torpedo acquisition range. Lasts for 90 seconds. So you don't get too terribly long out of it, but as you've seen, if you deploy it at the right time in the right circumstance, it is very powerful. As for the survivability, you already saw the base HP in that initial clip. It's 17,200, but with Sims as one of the inspirations, we've got 19,860. So, fair amount of HP, I would say. The thing also has torpedoes, but they are, of course, the Pan-Asian trademark deepwater torpedoes that can't hit other destroyers. So keep that in mind if you do pick it up. You don't want to be one of those players that intentionally launches these torpedoes at another destroyer, only for them to glide safely under the destroyer's hull and not hit it. You see that happen a lot when people are playing the Pan-Asian destroyers. Sometimes it's maybe not intentional and the torpedoes just happen to get near you when you're playing an enemy destroyer against them, but sometimes it very much is intentional. And, just keep in mind, they don't damage destroyers, but they do damage battleships, cruisers, and of course aircraft carriers. And there are 10 torpedoes in total, in 2 quintuple launchers that can fire off either side of the ship since they're down the center line. The torpedoes have a range of 10 km. They're a little bit on the slower side, I would say, at 62 knots. And they have a rather long 120-second reload, although I assume you could build this thing for torpedoes. I don't think you want to build it for torpedoes, though, due to the smoke sonar combo and the relatively fast reload and good DPM of the guns. That's just too useful for sinking enemy destroyers, and if you chose not to build into the guns, your reload would be in excess of 3 seconds. You might not think 3 seconds compared to 2.5 is that big of a difference, but it really is when it comes to destroyer knife fights. And I think the most important thing you can do as a destroyer, next to taking the objectives and spotting for the team, of course, is take out the other enemy destroyers. And for that, especially on something where there's 0 chance of you hitting a torpedo on an enemy destroyer, then you need the guns to work well. So I would recommend building into the guns, but I think you could go either way. These torpedoes, by the way, do a maximum simulated damage of 16,832, And this Leon out here is about to find out how much they hurt when they make contact. He beached himself on that rock there and he's reversing. I don't think we accounted for his reversing too well. We could have probably hit him with more torpedoes than we end up doing right here. But as it stands, we get 2 to hit, and that's about half of his HP with just those 2. If you hit a battleship that doesn't have very good torpedo damage reduction, these things are going to hurt. And of course, being deep water torpedoes, they aren't spotted until really late. They've got a torpedo detectability range by sea of 0.8 kilometers, which in my opinion makes them one of the scariest torpedoes in the game. By the time you see them, it's too late to dodge, whereas with conventional torpedoes, let's say on the IJN torpedo boats like Kagero at Tier 7, those torpedoes are spotted at, I think, 1.7 kilometers base, and you can probably extend that to over 2 kilometers with some of the skills that increase torpedo acquisition range in certain ships and certain classes. So that 2 kilometer window you've got when you see them, that's a lot of time to dodge compared to 0.8. It's very, very intimidating, I think, when you're facing the deep water torpedoes because of that. Maneuverability characteristics on the Siliwangi. That is where things are not super great for this destroyer. It's got a rather pedestrian, let's say, maximum speed of 36.5 knots. You can buff that, I suppose, a little bit with the speed flag and, get up to 37, 38 knots. But there is no engine boost available in the consumables. It's just the smoke and the sonar. So you're really not going to be going above 36 knots, and by today's standards, that is pretty slow for a destroyer. The turning circle, though, is really good at 660 meters, and the rudder shift is 4.4 seconds. As for the concealment, we've got it built to 5.3, which, of course, means we can stealth sonar. Again, the ship acquisition range for the sonar is 5.4. So with our detectability being at 5.3, we know every time we suddenly get spotted when we previously were not spotted, that there's a destroyer inside of our sonar range, and we can reveal him with the press of a button. You can do better than that, though. You can, as I was initially doing, use Eric Bai and also Swirsky as the 2 inspirations on the Shenbing commander, along with the Look at Me Now skill in the second row. That's key to achieving the best concealment, of course. The Look at Me Now, when it's fully maxed, gives you a 6% concealment buff. If you add Bay and Swirsky on top of that, you are at 5.1 kilometers, which is really good. 5.3, though, like what we have here, I think that is fine enough. I eventually ended up switching Swirsky for Sims because I felt like the thing getting into so many gunfights with other destroyers probably needed a couple thousand extra HP. That can really make the difference in a match when you have that couple thousand, especially if you're fighting destroyers all the time. It maybe means you're still floating when otherwise you wouldn't have been if you get into a particularly challenging flight where the enemy is doing a lot of damage before you sink them. So all in all, I would say this is a pretty potent destroyer with some pretty good potential. And I don't know exactly how many people have this coupon, but the 7-year coupon, I think it is only to players who have been playing the game for 7 years. You get it, and it reduces the cost of a Tier 7 doubloon ship from the normal price of $17,500 to 1 doubloon. If you have that coupon, Siliwangi is probably a ship worth picking up. However, if you have that coupon and don't have things like, for example, HMS Rodney at Tier 7, I would absolutely go for that one first. Ship for ship and tier for tier, I'd say Rodney is a better ship than this, but this certainly has powerful gimmicks that go a long way to making it really strong. And here, with the smoke screen, I think this is our last one of the battle, we can sort of see the farming potential on the King George V. 8% fire chance on these guns reloading every 2.5 seconds is not too bad. I think we've lit 2 fires on the King George, and these are the only fires we've lit in the battle, but then again, this is the only farming we've really sat down to do. And against a Tier 6 battleship like this, Well, the damage does start to add up, although I think in situations where you've got fires burning away on a target like this and you're farming, they're giving you broadside. Probably the AP is the better way to go. As you can see here, it will net you some more consistent damage, higher damage as well than the HE. I think the 1900 is maybe a little bit anemic, but the 2500 maximum damage on the AP is pretty good against broadsides. And then you've got Shenbing's base trait working for you to improve the penetration angles a little bit. And while it looked like this particular battle a few minutes ago might be a win for the blue team, I think we were ahead on ships and also ahead on caps. Well, all of our ships have gone down, aside from me, the friendly destroyer, and one remaining battleship. Less than a minute left to go in the match, and we've got Brandenburg out here, who up until this point has been very good at dodging torpedoes by not sailing in a straight line. It's incredible how difficult it can be to hit a battleship that is moving unpredictably like this guy is. Probably in retrospect, we should have just thrown the torpedoes out there sooner than this. If we throw them out now, they're not even going to have enough time to reach the Brandenburg before the game ends. Friendly destroyers' torpedoes are coming in close to the Brandenburg. They may even hit. But at this point, the only way we're winning this battle is if we sink the Brandenburg immediately. I think that would be enough to swing the points and win the match for the blue team. It might not. No, it definitely would, because they would lose points and we would gain points. But there's just not enough time for anybody to sink the Brandenburg. He goes from full health to about a quarter in the span of 60 seconds, but because of that, the enemy team ultimately ends up winning. Nevertheless, I think Siliwangi, with everything we've seen here, has a lot of carry potential and is probably a pretty powerful destroyer. I don't know that I would rate it at top desirability for the tier if you don't have other things like Rodney, so I'd probably go for that first, but this is not a ship I wouldn't recommend, certainly. I think it's pretty good. Forgive me if you hear the sound of Brutus coughing in the background. He does have some medical problems and he does cough from time to time, but he's okay. Don't worry about him. He's a fine dog. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.